Okay, so I left off, and it was on what an absent seizure feels like. It doesn't really feel like anything. It feels like you've fallen asleep and you've woken up. And depending on the extent of that seizure, like it could last, I think mine lasts now like 2 to 4 seconds. They just kind of are unnoticeable. I know I've had one if I'm in a conversation with somebody, and I also know I've had one because there's like a missing gap in time, but it's very, very unnoticeable. It is noticeable though. Say I'm washing the dishes and I have the hot water running, but it hasn't gotten hot yet, but my hand's under there, and I come out of an absent seizure and now there's like hot water on my hand. That's never pleasant. Or have Asher and I'm walking him to the door and the door like hits me in the face because I've stopped walking and I've had a seizure. So basically it's just like the effects of the absent seizure. That's what you feel. I also started having, when I was 19, partial complex. These ones, it's like every type of seizure kind of has a bunch of subcategories, but this one for me was one arm would start jerking or one limb or something. So it would feel like if you took your arm and just started jerking it, and you would get tired very fast. Okay? And there's nothing you can do to stop it. So emotionally, you feel stupid. And like people are looking at you and you get sore. Now we're going to tackle the big one. Cognitive seizures. Okay. I don't even know where to begin with these. So cognitive seizures have to do with your emotions. So if you've experienced any sort of trauma in your life, it can be anything, all right? Childhood trauma, adult trauma, use your imagination, but trauma, okay? And you go and you say, I'm not going to think about it because this is normal, this happens, I'm going to put a smile on my face. This is how I'm going to deal with it, is I'm just not going to deal with it, okay? Then eventually, what happens to some people, which is what happened to me, is it manifests in the form of convulsing. And it physically takes form, and I convulse. I don't have to be thinking about the situation. I don't have to be, something can trigger it. Like for me, sensory overload, stress, those things really seem to be triggers for when I convulse or if I convulse. So a cognitive seizure therapist, what they do is they talk to you about your problem. Now, I'm not going to go into the situations I went through that caused this, that I suppressed for years, but it wasn't normal, and I thought it was, okay? So when I first went and saw a therapist and they were trying to get to the root of my problem, the first 2 sessions, I wasn't even speaking. All right. And they made me sign a little waiver that said I wouldn't commit suicide, which I understand why they have you sign that. I also, because I'd gone nonverbal. Like, I wasn't going to speak to anyone. What was the point? I knew I wouldn't commit suicide because I wouldn't. It's not something I do. But did I have suicidal thoughts? Like, I'd be better off if I wasn't on this earth and thoughts like that. I had them. Okay. Just being raw with y'all. Thank God I'm better and here and fine. All right. But I remember when I signed these forms thinking, I'm signing this saying I'm not gonna, but what would stop me? Like, how would they punish me or whatever? Like, I could sign it and then still do it. And then there'd be nothing they could do. Anyway, that's a bleak thought. Let's not think about that. So for my first 2 sessions, I didn't even talk to him, which was fine. He just sat there, because when a good cognitive therapist, they're out there, will not push to figure out what the problem is. What they're going to do is they're going to form a friendship with you so that you can talk to them about all your problems once you have trust in a person. Because how can I go to someone and pour out my heart, pour out my problems if I don't trust that person, right? So they form a friendship with you first. And through forming that friendship, you're going to give them information that they can take, and they can be like, all right, so this isn't normal, this isn't normal, this isn't normal. These might be triggers for her. My cognitive therapist said when he first met me, and I was convulsing like almost nonstop. And I did not want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to speak. He said he wasn't sure I'd get better, right? It was like, I was going to try my hardest. I was going to do everything I could for you. But you were just so, he said, you just look so helpless. And, which is weird, which God has brought me so far. Because I went from being someone that he said was probably one of the worst patients he's ever had to the best, like, or one of his best, right? And we figured out what my trigger was pretty early on, and we thought it was just that, because by session 3, I was speaking to him a little bit and starting to trust him a little bit. And I think it was around my 8th visit that he figured out what my trigger was. Now, they take your trigger and they start trying to figure out ways and give you tactics to help you keep that from happening. So essentially what's happening is whatever happened in your life, whatever trauma you went through, the people who did that to you, who an apology might literally stop you from having seizures, right? Or them changing their lives might stop you. However, they're not going to do that. It's just not going to happen, because they are who they are. They did what they did. And so what you have to do is you have to take what they did and like change them in your mind and how you perceive them. So it's weird because it's like they're the ones who did the wrong thing and they should be trying to help you not die, because you can die from these, right? But instead you're the one having to like change and alter everything. So the first tactics he gave me was writing down everything certain people in my life had done to me and burning it, talking to a wall, yelling my feelings out, hitting things. None of that was really working for me. But then horses, I don't have any sort of seizure when I'm around horses, because that's how incredibly happy I am. And he was like, I wish you could just pinch a tent, like just go out and live in a field of horses. He goes, because you would be completely seizure free. We could probably get you off all of your medications. Like, that's how good they are. So what he figured out was that was my answer. So whenever I get anxious or feeling anxiety, I shut my eyes and I start thinking about horses and the happiness they bring me. And I remove myself from the situation, say if I'm sitting with a person who has caused the damage and won't change or own up to what they did. Okay? Now, for someone who has cognitive seizures, but that person is still in your life and there's nothing you can really do about it, right? You can put up a protective fence around you, okay? And that is a necessity for you, okay? And this goes for not just if you have seizures. This goes if you have anxiety problems, if you struggle emotionally, like whatever it is. You don't want anyone in your life who is going to be constantly like, you're a horrible person and you like blah 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 blah. And no, get rid of those people. But if you still want them in your life because they're important to you, put up what's called an emotional fence, okay? So you allow yourself to have some type of time with this person, but you don't allow yourself to get close with this person. They don't have to be your best friend. They don't have to, you don't have to be emotionally connected to them. Okay? You're protecting yourself, and that's fine. That is fine. It doesn't mean you haven't forgiven them. You've forgiven the person, now you're protecting yourself. Okay? So that you've forgiven them, but chances are they're still going to try and hurt you. So now, anything that they say, you have this wall of what they say does not matter, okay? I'm not going to let it affect me. And if they start saying it a lot, I'm just not going to see them at all. And if you can't help but see that person in certain situations, then again, you've created a wall. So that's that. That's the treatment for that. Absence seizure is medicines, which my absence seizures do not have a, they're not under control. Neither are my cognitive seizures. I'm just having very, very, very few. Okay. Sorry, my nose is running. So that's the treatment. What a cognitive seizure feels like in my situation is it's a big convulsion where I am fully awake and it feels like you're drowning. Okay? You are 100% aware of everything that's going on. You're shaking like crazy. And it could be, the scariest place to have one is in the bathroom, because there's a toilet where, like, and cabinets all around you where you can hit your head multiple times, which I have, and there's nothing you can do to stop it from happening. All right, you can fall downstairs, hit your head on the wall, and like continuously just beat your head against the wall, and there's nothing you can do. You can't breathe, and you start choking on your saliva, but there's nothing you can do. Again, nothing. So I close my eyes, or I try to. Sometimes my eyes refuse to be closed, and I start thinking about horses, especially mini horses, because they're so cute. But that's why people and corporations don't want to hire me, and why I never tell them if I try and get a job, because, right, I'm undependable. And even when I was like just having absence, I was still a liability. I would be one of the best employees, or a really good employee, and then I would have a seizure, and suddenly I'd be like, oh, sorry, I have seizures. And they would get me down to like an hour a week, to where the drive didn't make sense for like mama to drive me to work. So I just stopped working there. And then they don't have a suit on their hands, right? Like, I can't sue them because technically I quit my job. Okay? That's what they do. That is what they do. So, yeah, it feels like you are drowning. You're gasping for air, you can't get any, and you can't control whatever your body's doing. And then depending on how long the seizure lasts, you just hurt all over, especially if you've been hitting things or whatever. It's scary, I'll be honest with you. But if you see a cognitive therapist who will help you figure out what helps you in those situations to either stop the seizure from happening, then you're good to go. Seizure auras, for me, I can fight a seizure aura, and that's like a gut feeling. It's like, you know, something's gonna happen, but you are like, maybe it won't happen, so I'm gonna fight this. So you might, I mean, for me, I'll fight it, and I'll be like, no, I'm not gonna let it happen. I'm not gonna let it happen. And I'll start crying because my body will start hurting or whatever. And if I just let my body convulse, then it's over, and I don't have to deal with it. And then it's like, okay, done. I feel great. However, in some situations, I'm able to like fight the seizure aura off and not have the seizure. So it's a give and take. And I know this sounds horrible, but I can speak from an epileptic point of view. Sometimes it's easier, if you're in a rush, to just have the seizure and then get to the wherever you want to go, instead of being miserable for 20 minutes or however long the seizure aura is going to last, be late for the event, and like not just get it over with. And that sounds horrible, but that's your reality, right? And so it's hard to explain if you haven't had seizures or a seizure. but it's almost like taking medicine, allowing a seizure to happen. If you have some control over a seizure aura, it's like, I'll just get it over with. If I'm in a safe environment, like on the couch, and then just won't, because we have to be somewhere in 20 minutes, and I might as well get it over with. Because I can try and fight it off, cry, be miserable, and it might happen or it might not. So I'm just gonna let it happen, and then whatever. And that's kind of what a seizure aura feels like. My dog can sense my seizure auras, and so he jumps up on me, and at first I thought he was just like jumping up on me and being annoying, but then I realized that he was trying to get me to sit down. He's smart. He's very smart. He's also very protective of me, in the sense that if he feels like I'm in an unsafe environment, he tries to like get me to a couch or a chair or something. If he starts smelling a seizure aura, I don't think they can smell seizure aura, but if he starts sensing that like I'm shaky or something, he'll start nudging me like, hey, we need to go somewhere. And he's not a trained service dog, he's just smart. I mean, they're smart animals, right? And I use him as a service animal. All I'd have to do is register, and I could take him places with me. He's got too much energy for that, but like that sentence almost feels like acid coming out of my mouth, but it's the cold hard truth. Sometimes it's easier to just let it happen and then go on with your life than to fight it and fight it and fight it and cry and be in pain, and either it happens or it doesn't. Again, I'm very thankful that I'm up and around and able to walk and be free and live my life, because I remember a time I was convulsing so bad and having so many seizures. I was sleeping on the floor, and my mom would literally, like, I was sleeping against the wall, so if I hit the wall and had a seizure, she could run in my bedroom and be like, what's wrong? I remember her like taking me to the bathroom and sitting me on the toilet and sponge baths, and I lost a lot of weight, and I remember her like spoon feeding me and not being able to go to church. And then finally I was so desperate, I was like, listen, I don't care, we've tried everything, just get me to church. And my brother-in-law, like someone, I think it was my brother-in-law, like carrying me into church, and I was standing up for like 2 minutes, and then I had a seizure, and the church just started praying for me, and there was like literally no sermon, just like prayer just broke out, and everyone was praying, and God's spirit fell, and it was the most amazing sermon, and we just followed the Holy Spirit and what he wanted to do in that service. So it was pretty cool. I don't know, it's like the word, like, if you've ever made fun of seizures, don't. I feel like that should be pretty obvious, but there's a 1 in 18th chance that you're going to have one day, unfortunately. So, like, don't make fun of it. It's a serious topic. People die. I feel like we should feel open about talking about it. When I was asked to be part of like the epilepsy group in Mississippi, because I was very open about talking about seizures, and I didn't feel like it's such a sensitive topic. We shouldn't like be transparent about it. I felt actually very honored because my story has touched a lot of lives, and so if I can help someone, I'm gonna help someone. However, still to some people, it just makes them very uncomfortable, which I understand. No one likes seeing someone have a seizure. I don't like having the seizure. But that's that. So that's what seizures feel like, and that's why cognitive seizures happen. We're not sure why obstinate seizures happen. They're a childhood seizures, and I still have them. So anyway, thank you.